Powerhouses, it is Coach Marisa Reyes here, and it is straight up 7 o'clock, and so we are starting our Friday Night Live. I'm out here in the field, also known as my garden, because today we're going to talk about gardening and the top mistakes that we make with gardening. So this is a compilation of my own personal mistakes and then recommendations from my crew on Facebook. So hopefully these are going to help you as you start growing your own garden to not make those mistakes. So we've got birdies singing in the background. You guys can't see the lilacs. They're right behind the camera. It smells amazing. And I'm out here in my straw bale garden. It's currently on, this is now day 8. We started this last Thursday. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So why are we talking about gardening today? Well, in Minnesota where I live, May 15th is the frost line. So after May 15th, there's a very good chance that we will not have frost anymore. And boy, we cut it right up to the 14th. I think we still had frost. Nope, the 13th. The 13th we still had frost. Crazy. So that means it got below freezing that night. So after May 15th, it should be safe for you to start planting flowers, vegetables. So that's why we're talking about it now, because maybe you decided that this is your year to start a garden. Maybe you want to be able to make sure that you always have access to fresh produce that you yourself has created. I know back when I started becoming aware of organic foods and wanting to have more control over what I was putting in my body, I couldn't find organic cucumbers anywhere or bell peppers, and they were on the Dirty Dozen list, and that's put out by the Environmental Working Group. And I was like, okay, well then I guess I need to grow those myself so I know that they're not full of all those chemicals and pesticides, and you know, that they'll be good for my body. So that, I think probably was 10 years ago now. 2010 I think is when I started gardening because of that reason itself. And since that time it has grown from there. You can see this is a 10 bale, there's the 10th one right there all by itself. This is a 10 bale straw garden. And we actually just started with a regular garden. You know, just something small when we began, and then we fell into one of the gardening mistakes, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So hopefully you will get some value out of this, and if you're watching, you can chat right along with us if we're live. So at the bottom of your phone screen, there'll be a little box that looks like a text message symbol. If you click on that, you can start typing in your questions or your comments. If you're on your computer, on the right-hand side, you'll see the chat box come up, and you can, see, Tolkers is already on there. You can type in your chat there. So, all right, the first mistake, very common when it comes to gardening, is getting too big too fast. That's what happened to us. So we had our first year gardening. You know, we cleared a small patch of land and started planting. It went really well. And then year 2, we're like, let's double it in size. And so I don't know, I don't think you guys can see the full thing. Here, let me see if I can help you. This is an enormous area that we have. And the problem is it got way too big, way too fast. We could not maintain it. And as you can see, half of the space is now just grass again. Like, we couldn't stay on top of it. I think it's like, I don't know, it's like 40 feet by 30 feet, way too big for one person to be maintaining while also working full time. So that's mistake number 1. So what I recommend to you if you guys are starting gardening is start with using containers or doing high density planting, because it's much easier to keep track of the water that way. You can move it around if you need to. Telkers, my mom said I grew too big too fast because of all the hamburger helper I ate. Right? So it can be a problem if you grow too big too fast, like you're not ready for it and you get overwhelmed. And so then you have to resort to like survival tactics instead of like your best effort. And that's what happened in gardening, and we couldn't stay on top of the weeding, and lost control real fast. So, and then it wasn't fun either. So start small. High density planting, if you're interested in that, the MI gardener, MI as in Michigan gardener, he's got some awesome resources. I use his stuff every year. If you just search that in YouTube, he's got like, you can even buy there's like the sheets of paper, and they've got the holes on it so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck, whether you're planting in a raised garden bed or actually just like big tubs, or planters. That works great. Yeah, so that's a good place to start. Even just one tomato plant. You're gardening. It's really exciting to do that. Okay, so keep it manageable, start small, and gradually increase. So what you see around me here, we have deer. And my first year gardening, we had, it was awesome. It was like the beginning of August. It's like harvest time. Everything's coming in. And we are going to be going out of town for a week. And I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? Who's going to pick up all of our vegetables that are just like exploding right now? Well, I woke up the next morning before we headed out of town, and I walked up to my garden, and it had been decimated. The deer, we just had like a low fence at that time. The deer came in, and they had themselves an all-night rager. They ate everything except for the peppers. I had beautiful like butternut squash, like this big, and they just took one bite out of it, like giving me the finger, and I was like, oh, how dare you? And so that's why now we have an 8-foot fence going all the way around that they cannot jump that high. So we no longer have deer problems. Other critters, yes, but no deer problems. All right, mistake number 2. I made the assumption that organic gardening meant that you don't put anything on your plants or the soil. So, year 1, that worked great because the soil had not yet been depleted, but year 2, I didn't put anything out there, no fertilizer, no pesticide, no nothing, and it went because soil nutrients are vitally important to the quality of the plants that you are growing. So a lot of my questions to Facebook followers were like, well, how do you get great soil? So there's lots of great resources out there. I just threw in the towel and we started doing straw bale gardens instead. Because now I don't have to worry about supplementing my soil. I don't have to go do soil testing and soil samples and, you know, buying stuff and stuff. Like the bale, it's all self-contained. If I follow the directions in my book, which is by Minnesota's own Joel Karsten, Straw Bale Gardens, the complete guide. This, I think, is version 2, is the updated version. If you follow those directions, like, it doesn't matter whether you have a place to plant or not. Like, you don't need, as long as you have 6 hours of sun, you're golden. So you can put your straw bale on a balcony if you're in an apartment building or a condo. You can put it out on your front lawn, your back lawn, wherever, and as long as you follow the directions that they give you, like, that's gonna give your plants everything that they need. And so you don't have to worry about soil anymore, which is why I have now converted to straw bale gardening. Then I also learned, after my first year of straw bale gardening, had a fail there as well. Boy, Tulkers, you're really going strong on the chat here. I didn't realize that I also needed to add fertilizer monthly as all the plants were growing. Specifically, like tomato plants, they just like leach it all out, and because they're so robust in their growth, like, we have to supplement. And that there's nothing wrong with that. And I like that in the book, Joel talks about here's the organic way to do it, and here's the conventional way to do it. So I have choices. And the organic way is smelly. And so I haven't done the organic way. I've just done it the conventional way, but everything else I'm doing is in alignment with what I want to do. That's the beauty of having choices, folks. So you decide what you want to put on the plants that you're going to be eating. Okay, mistake number 3, not having enough sun. So when we built this garden, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, it had full sun all day. It was great. And then I had these black walnut trees that are all along here in my neighbor's yard, and they got taller. And then all these trees over here, they got taller. And pretty soon, I didn't have much sunlight at all. I didn't have enough sunlight. So what Joel Carson recommends is 6 hours minimum a day of sunlight. And thankfully my neighbor cut down all the big branches that were overhanging our garden. And so last year we had big sun again. It was great, because otherwise we would have had to move the garden or just give up on gardening altogether. So 6 hours of sun. You need 6 hours of sun in order for your plants to grow. Oh, Tulkers, you're so funny. How do you feel about topsy-turvy tomato planters? I've never done it. This is how I plant, so I don't get real exciting when it comes to gardening, other than doing straw bales now, because then I don't have to do anything else. I don't like weeding. I'm not good at it. And that brings us to mistake number 4. Old-fashioned weeding. So as our garden began to expand, I thought that I needed to continue to weed by hand. Oh boy, guys. I mean, and I'd be like, yeah, that's great, I can stay on top of it. I could not. Especially because like when we tilled at that time, all the grass just tilled into it and came right back, and with a flourish. So I was fighting a losing battle. So I want to show you guys some tools that have really helped me in the battle against the weeds. So, okay, conventional weeding, people think you got to use a hoe. Bad idea, because this is actually meant, it's better for planting, if you're going to be planting in the ground, than it is for weed removal. This is a recipe for frustration if you're going to use this. So, my good friend Jody, one of my gardening gurus, she and her family introduced me to what's called a scuffle hoe. So you can get this at your local hardware store or probably garden center. This one's built by Ames, and boy, this was fun to use. In fact, the day, so they swung by and they were using the scuffle hoe. Her kids were in my garden, and they took turns. Everybody wanted to do it, which, like, that's a rare thing. I want to weed. So everybody was having a great time. This is awesome because this blade here, it goes like just right underneath the roots and cuts everything off. And so then you have this nice pile of whatever weeds and unwanted plants were growing in your garden that you don't want, and you can rake it all up, put it in the compost pile, done. So this works really well. It's not super great with grass, but if you don't like to weed and go through there and pull everything out by hand, the scuffle hoe is going to save you so much time. I use it in my driveway flower gardens because we have helicopters that come from our silver maples, and so I can just get in there and, you know, that's bad form. Here's my form. I get in there, I use my scuffle hoe, and I don't know, it's probably like 20 minutes of work and I'm good to go. So if you have a gravel driveway, it also works great to get the weeds out of your gravel driveway. So dual purpose. Tulkers agrees. If you really, really, really hate weeding, I strongly recommend doing a straw bale garden, because if you do it right, then you don't have to weed anything at all. And that is actually why I've got the landscape fabric in between all of the rows. So in the past, we would weed by hand to get all the grass out of there and then put the landscape fabric down. But that brings us to mistake number 5, which is using low quality landscape fabric. And you get what you pay for, folks, when it comes to this. So my first year, I didn't put anything on top of the landscape fabric. We weeded it all out, put the fabric down, and then the second year, all the grass came right up through it. So then I had grass growing in my garden, and I was like, well, that's not great. So, but I had purchased, I didn't know it, I had the economy version, which is like the cheapest one you can get, and so you get what you pay for. So it let a lot of light through, and so that's why the plants were able to just bust right through it. So what I'm going to do this year, my goal is, we've got the cheap landscape fabric down, and then I need to cover it with something. So whether that's going to be straw or grass clippings, or I don't want to do wood chips because I don't want to sit in wood chips while I'm harvesting and caring for my plants, because that would be uncomfortable in shorts. So we'll see what ends up happening, but that's another reason why I use the fabric, because I hate weeding. It takes so much time, and it's too much. This is way too big of a garden for me to be able to do something like that. Okay, So what I recommend is that you get what you pay for. So if you want to just be able to put your fabric down and nothing on top of it, then you're gonna have to go with the high-end stuff. So they've got fabric that lasts 15, 20, I think there's even like a 30-year one, like a platinum version. If that's what you want to do, it's going to be a lot thicker, and then it's going to be a lot more difficult for the sun to get through, for the plants to be able to grow up through, and so that's how that works. So you get to decide whatever you're willing to invest. The cheaper ones, you're just going to have to replace it more often because it's not meant to last very long. I'm going to see how long I can get it to go when I actually cover it with something else. Mistake number 6 is inconsistent watering. So you can have every intention of having a great garden, and then life gets busy, you forget to water your plants, they start to droop, maybe you're not having regular rain, and or you're having a drought going on and it's really hard to stay on top of. And so I made that mistake, and the game changer for me is I got my own irrigation system. So this has been a lifesaver for me. This is the Dig raised bed drip watering kit. It works great on my straw bale garden. So I think I paid like between 30 and 40 bucks for this a couple of years ago. Got it at Home Depot. You can Google it. It was very easy to install. There are videos on YouTube. That's actually what introduced me to it, is using it in raised beds, and I was like, cool, I can do that in my straw bale garden. And then I've got a timer hooked up, and once I install it, and I reuse the same system every year, which is why I can't reconfigure my bales. That's okay, I'm okay with that. And then I set it, and I basically can forget it, because now it waters itself as often as I have programmed it to do, and my plants are happy and they grow great. So we used to use like the sprinkler, you know, the kind that goes like this. That was okay, but it caused a lot of problems because there's the splashback, and then there was like the mildew powder on leaves, and it was not ideal. So this works much better, and then there is no waste because it's dripping directly onto the surface where the water needs to go, and so it's much more efficient and sustainable for your watering, instead of having it go everywhere and then a bunch of it evaporate. I hope these tips were helpful in getting you going on starting your first garden, or if you are gardening and you want to take it up a notch, hopefully this will help you prevent making those same mistakes that I made when we started to expand our garden and take on far too much. So if you're wondering what you should plant, I just recommend plant what you like to eat. So if you don't like Brussels sprouts, don't plant Brussels sprouts. I love carrots, I love beets, I love cherry tomatoes, kale, and collard greens. Like, I can't find organic collard greens anywhere, but I can plant them myself, and they work really well in the sides of these straw bales. So I don't grow them on the top, they go on the sides, and then they grow up like this, and they do amazingly well. So both my kale and my collard greens for that. So just grow what you like and start small and see how it goes, and gradually expand. I am a huge fan of straw bale gardening because it took out so much of the work that I didn't like about gardening. All the risk, the fertilizing, the weeding, the overwatering. Like, you know, like if you don't know what kind of soil you have, you can easily oversaturate your plants and drown them, or like I have sandy, and so the water just, it's gone. And so using these bales helps us be able to regulate that a lot better. And so we have much more productive gardens than without it. So I hope that this is helpful for you. If you've got questions, please put them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. And I wish you happy gardening. I am Coach Marisa Reyes of The Power Within, empowering healthy and fulfilling lives, body, mind, and soul.